I am Professor Barry Penn-Hollar, and these are online presentations entitled Principles of Ethics. In these presentations, you will be introduced to 5 moral principles which we will use to analyze and make sense of issues related to the practice of healthcare in this introductory course in biomedical ethics. A first task here is simply to define what ethics is. I define ethics as critical and systematic reflection on morality. Some people also call this, or sometimes this is also called, moral philosophy. The point is, it is applying human reason to the moral life. Let me say a word about critical reflection on morality. Critical reflection, as I'm using it here, means characterized by careful analysis and the making of judgments. It's not finding fault. We use the word critical in a variety of ways. Sometimes we mean finding fault. But here I mean the word critical in the same way we use it when we say that we want you to become critical thinkers as a result of your college education. To be a critical thinker is simply to be systematic and thoughtful. It doesn't mean to find fault. You may be familiar with the word being used this way in terms of like music critics or art critics or movie critics. Those folks don't simply say bad things about the art, the film, the recordings that they analyze. They also say good things, but we call them critics because they engage in systematic reflection. A second thing to be said about critical reflection as we're using it here is that it involves becoming aware of multiple perspectives. You should not have the impression that in this course I'm going to tell you what's right and what's wrong about all the issues related to the practice of healthcare. No, there are going to be multiple perspectives on many of these issues. And a part of what being a critical thinker means, and critical and systematic reflection on the moral life means, is that you become aware of a variety of perspectives, including your own. One of the things we'll put under critical scrutiny in this class is our own beliefs and your own beliefs. You will step back from them, if you will, and think about them. Think about the reasons behind them. Compare them to other perspectives and the reasons behind those perspectives, and try to come to a more sophisticated conclusion as to whether your moral beliefs and your immediate reactions to certain moral issues are in fact the ones that you would want to keep after you start doing ethics. That is to say, after you start engaging in critical and systematic reflection on these issues. You might think of ethics as an academic discipline like biology. The biologist has a microscope, and under his microscope, the biologist studies life forms. Like the biologist, the ethicist has a critical apparatus. In the case of the biologist, the apparatus is, in this picture at least, is a microscope. Our critical apparatus is the 5 principles that we're going to be using to analyze moral situations. And under our microscope, on the slide where the biologist has life forms of cells or whatever, under our microscope is the moral life or human morality. Ethics is critical and systematic reflection on the moral life or morality, but what is morality? Well, I think for our purposes we can use a relatively simple definition. Morality has to do with our beliefs or judgments about right and wrong conduct, good and bad character, and the ends, goals, and purposes that define a good human life. And then it's all the behaviors and policies and practices consistent with those beliefs or judgments. Now, I think if I had asked any of you to define morality, you would have talked about right and wrong conduct. But I think it's important to recognize that we don't just have a sense that certain behaviors are right and certain others are wrong. We also, unfortunately maybe, make judgments about people. We have a sense of what the characteristics are that define a good person. We have a sense of what it means to have virtue. At the same time, we have a sense of what it means to be a bad person, what characteristics we would call vices. Possibly the most important and significant, profound aspect of our morality and of the moral life is our sense of the ends, goals, and purposes that define a good human life, the ends, goals, and purposes that give life meaning, that enable us to say that's a good life, or one has lived a good life. It's also important to think about that in relation to healthcare or medicine. I mean, clearly, healthcare and medicine gain their significance because of their relationship to some of the important things we think define a good human life, some of the goals we have for ourselves. Obviously, we prefer being healthy to sick, being functional to being injured. We prefer being fully functional as human beings and being without pain and suffering. We have healthcare. Healthcare gains its meaning precisely in terms of the contribution it makes to those significant ends, goals, and purposes that we have for our lives.
Well, then, putting all this together, we can say that ethics is critical and systematic reflection on our beliefs and judgments about human conduct, human character, and the conditions that are necessary for making our lives truly good. Of course, we will be reflecting critically and systematically on our beliefs and judgments about conduct in the context of providing health care. We will be thinking about the character of healthcare practitioners and even of patients. And we will be thinking about how healthcare contributes to those conditions that make our lives truly good. The way healthcare contributes to good health and to physical wholeness.